First, I need to apologize to you, our nosleep. I am so sorry. I'm coming to you in my time of need. Please help me. Please read this to the end. That's it. That's all I ask. I don't know what to do or where to turn. Please just help me. That's all I ask.
Good night, Tales.
My name is Andrea, and I'm a single mother. I don't tell you this like it's some badge of honor, and I'm expecting cookies, milk, and chocolate-covered snowflakes like most of the others in my social circle would. They want your pats on the back and recognition. I just want some of your time. I see motherhood as a burden. Necessary? Yes, but still a burden. My son's name is Jesse. He's 11. That's 5th grade for the math haters. Jesse started the 5th grade this year like any other kid would. There was a little bit of trepidation and lots of excitement. He was a happy-go-lucky sort of kid, full of life and energy. All that changed after he met Stan on Tuesday. Stan was a late addition to Jesse's class, a transfer student from another district. Jesse's teacher sat Stan next to Jesse. When I picked Jesse up after school on Tuesday, he told me that Stan was his new best friend. He wasn't acting like himself though. He was pale and sweaty. I took his temperature, but he wasn't running a fever. I asked about the day, and all he would tell me was that Stan was his new best friend. Stan's my new best friend, Jesse would say. I know, I can't wait to meet him, I'd say back. Mom, Stan is great, you should meet him. He's my new best friend, the best in the world. We must have had this same conversation 1,000 times that night. When I tucked Jesse in bed, he looked up at me with tears in his eyes. He put his little hand in front of his face and wiggled his index finger, telling me to come closer. I bent over him and he put his hands to either side of his mouth. You know, the little kid way of telling a secret. Well, I turned my head and he whispered something into my ear that chilled me. At the time, I didn't know why it chilled me, but it did. He whispered, "You believe me, right, Mom?" I sat back up and looked down at him. "Believe you about what, honey?" "Stan," he said. "Stan," he said. "Stan's my best friend." I nodded and took his temperature once more. Again, he wasn't running a fever. I went to bed, but couldn't really sleep that night. On Wednesday, when I pulled up to the school to drop Jesse off, he got this really weird look on his face and told me that he didn't want to go in. "Are you feeling sick?" I asked. "No," he said. He was chewing on his bottom lip like crazy. This was something else I had never seen him do. "No, I need to go to school." He opened the car door and got out. No goodbye, no I love you, nothing. He trudged up the front steps of the school with his head down. I let off the brake and turned away to drive to work. A little boy was standing right in front of my car. 2 more seconds and I would have run him over. The boy was pale, with a mop of blonde hair that was almost white and bright blue eyes. He knocked on the hood of my car twice, waved, and walked up the stairs to school. When I picked Jesse up after school on Wednesday, he looked a lot better. He was a tiny bit paler than normal, but he seemed happy. He told me all about his day. He told me about dinosaurs and music and math, and then he told me about recess. And then after math period, we had recess. "Mom, you'll never guess what I did today at recess." "Tell me," I said, smiling to myself as I'm driving. I'm thinking tag, football, keep away, all things I remember the boys doing at recess when I was that age. Something benign, something normal. "I joined a church." I frowned at this. A church? At recess? Jesse nodded. The Church of Stan. I thought that it must be some sort of new make-believe game that the kids were playing. "What's the Church of Stan?" I asked. "It's Stan's church, Mom." Jesse laughed like I was the silliest person in the world for asking that question. "What do you guys do though? You know, as members?" I asked. "Lots of stuff. Today though, we just listened to Stan talk. He was saying some funny words and I got sleepy and dozed off. A bunch of us did." I pulled into the driveway at home and we got out. "Was that it?" I asked. Things sounded weird for sure, but the kids didn't seem to be doing anything wrong. "Stan gave us flyers too." Jesse pulled out a crinkled up piece of paper and handed it to me. It was a piece of manila paper with 3 words written in black marker. Church of Stan. Again, weird, but nothing wrong. I just thought the boys were playing make-believe. I was wrong. When I picked Jesse up after school yesterday, I could tell that something was very wrong with my little boy. He looked panicked and scared. "What's going on, honey?" I asked, reaching out to feel his forehead. "No fever." "We played the soul game today," he said. Jesse's head was on a swivel. He couldn't sit still. He kept looking all around as we headed home. "The soul game?" I asked. Jesse just nodded and kept trying to look everywhere at once. Beads of sweat dotted his upper lip. "What's the soul game?" I asked. Jesse shook his head no and said nothing. "Jesse, what's the soul game?" I asked. I told him I didn't want to, but he said he wouldn't be my friend anymore if I didn't play. "Who wouldn't be your friend? Where were the teachers?" Jesse started breathing harder but still answered. "It happened in the church," he said. Then he whispered, "Teachers aren't allowed in the church." "The Church of Stan?" I asked. Jesse nodded and a tear slipped down his cheek. "What's the soul game, Jesse? I'm your mother. You tell me right now and I'll take care of everything," I said. "I can't tell you, Mom. I can't. The rules are bad. They're so bad." "What about Stan?" I asked. "Will Stan tell me the rules?" "No!" Jesse screamed this and scared me half to death. "Don't ask him the rules. Please don't, Mom. Please." I pulled into the driveway, scared and confused. "Promise me, Mom. Promise me, Mom. Promise me, Mom. Promise me, please." Jesse was bawling now, terrified. I took him into my arms and rocked him. I hadn't rocked him like that since he'd been in kindergarten. He fell asleep in my arms and I carried him inside. I took him straight to his room and got him ready for bed. "He just needs sleep," I kept telling myself. "All he needs is sleep." I put him to bed and ate dinner alone. I checked up on him around 9 when I went to bed. He seemed to be sleeping well, so I decided to go to sleep. I woke up to him screaming at the top of his lungs 18 minutes after midnight last night. I ran to his room, but he wasn't in his bed. I turned on the light, and Jesse came flying out of the closet like something was chasing him. He latched onto my leg and kept screaming. I tried to calm him down and ask what was wrong at the same time. He wasn't making any sense. He kept screaming about the soul game. He was impossible. I kept asking what that was, but he wouldn't tell me. I tried to put him back to bed, but he would have none of it. Finally, I just took him to my room and he slept in my bed. Jesse fell right to sleep. I was lying on my side, watching him, stroking his hair, when his eyes popped open and he stared right into mine. "I'll tell you the rules after school tomorrow, lady," he said. Then he closed his eyes. What was going on with my kid? In the darkness, I stared at the ceiling for a long time before rolling over to my side and staring into the bathroom. You know how when you're at the edge of sleep, sometimes your leg will kick and jerk you awake, or you'll imagine you're falling, or that you've just tripped over something and get jerked awake? That happened to me all last night, only I kept being ripped from sleep by seeing something in the doorway to the bathroom. Every time my eyes would start to slip shut, I'd see the dark outline of something large in the doorway and jerk awake. Of course, nothing would be there, and I would start falling asleep again. The outline would appear in the doorway once more, but it would be closer to me, like it had taken a baby step. Over and over this happened until morning. The morning on the way to school, Jesse seemed out of it, lethargic. I felt the same way. I was even more exhausted. I thought of asking Jesse about what he'd said right before he fell asleep, but couldn't. I was afraid it would send him into hysterics again, so I left it alone. I drove him to school, and he didn't say a word the whole time. He was acting like a robot, listless, unemotional. I got a call shortly after dropping him off to come pick him back up. He'd vomited in class. When I picked him up, he was the same. I asked him several questions, but he only gave me grunts in response. The plan at home was to get him changed out of his dirty clothes and then take him to the doctor. He didn't say anything until we pulled into the driveway. "Can Stan come over today?" he asked. He stared out of the windshield at the garage door. "You're not feeling well, honey, and do you really want him to come over?" I asked. I wanted to meet this kid, but it didn't sound like Jesse wanted him over. I, however, wanted to get to the bottom of things. "Yes," Jesse said. "Okay," I said. "Do you have his parents' number?" He already asked his parents, and they said it was okay. We have to wait until he's out of class, and I'd still like to talk to his parents. Okay. Jesse got out of the car, and we walked into the house. "You have their number?" I asked as I shut the door. "No," he said. I started to ask him how I was supposed to call them if I didn't have their number, but someone knocked on the door. I was still standing right next to it. I opened the door, and standing on my front step was the pale little boy with the blue eyes and a mop of white blonde hair that had almost run over on Wednesday. A little girl stood next to him with the same complexion. "Yes?" I asked. "Hi, Driz," the little boy said. "Is Jesse home?" The little boy standing on my front porch shouldn't have known that name. It was my nickname from college, created on a drunken night amongst my girlfriends, shortened from Drizzy. "No," I said. "That's fine," the little girl said. "My name is Devin, and you already know my brother's name." "Stan," I said. The little girl covered her mouth and giggled. Stan smiled and shrugged. It's really quite simple. Rule 1, don't walk past mirrors in the dark. Rule 2, don't leave any doors open when you go to bed tonight. Ask your son what Rule 3 is, and remember, a creak means you're falling behind. A rustle means you've almost lost. When the lights go down, hopefully you won't see the dark shadow standing in the corner of the room. Hopefully you won't hear it breathing as your eyes shut and you begin to drift off. And if you hear a bang, well, hopefully you never hear a bang. Stan turned and walked away with his sister. I stared after them both and shook my head. I wouldn't play their stupid game. I walked into the house and found Jesse sitting at the kitchen table, crying. "What's wrong?" I asked. "I heard a bang," he whispered. My mouth went dry. "When does the game end?" I asked. "It doesn't," he whispered. "It never ends." My heart started beating faster. "What's the third rule, Jesse?" His face fell and he sucked in a deep breath. "Rule 3. Knowing all 3 rules makes you a player." My stomach dropped. "What happens if you lose?" "When it's dark, you'll hear them coming. They like to let you know that when they're getting close." "Who?" "Stan and Devin," Jesse said. "They'll reach out through the mirrors or open doorways and drag you through." "How do you win?" I asked. "You win if you tell more people the rules to the soul game than the person that told you does." Something walks whistling past my house every night at 3:03 a.m. Every night, no matter the weather, something walks down our street, whistling softly. You can only hear it if you're in the living room or the kitchen when they walk by, and it always starts at exactly 3:03 a.m. The sound starts faint, somewhere near the beginning of the lane, near the Carson place. We're towards the middle of the street, so the whistling moves past us before fading away in the direction of the cul-de-sac. When I was younger, my sister and I would sneak into the kitchen some nights to listen. Mom and Dad didn't like that, and we'd catch hell if they found us out there, but they were never too hard on us since we always stuck to the one big rule: don't try to look at whatever was whistling. My neighborhood is a funny place. I've lived here since I was 6 and I love it. The houses are small but well kept, good-sized yards, plenty of places to roam. There are a lot of other kids here my age. I turned 13 back in October. We grew up together and would always play foursquare in the cul-de-sac, or roam around from back porch to back porch in the summer. This was a good place to grow up. I'm old enough to see it. And there's only 2 strange things here: the night whistling and the good luck. The whistling never bothered me much. Like I said, I couldn't even hear it from my bedroom, but Mom and Dad don't like talking about it, so I've stopped asking questions. My dad is a strong guy, tall and calm. He's had an accent ever since he moved to the US as a kid. His family, my grandparents, they're from the islands. That's what they call it. My dad, the only time he isn't so calm is if the whistler comes up. He talks a little quicker then, eyes move faster, and he tells us not to think about it so much and to always remember the one rule, the big rule. Don't try to look outside when the whistler goes past. Not that we could look even if we wanted. See, there are shutters on the inside of every window, thick pieces of heavy canvas that pull down from the top and latch to the bottom of the window frame. Each latch even has a small lock, about the size of what you'd find in a diary. My dad locks those shutters every night before we all go to bed and keeps the keys in his room. My mom, I don't know what she thinks about the whistling. I've seen her out in the living room before at 3:03 a.m. when the whistling sound starts. I could see her if I cracked my door open just an inch to peek. She's not out there often. At least I haven't caught her much, but once or twice a month, I think she sits out there on our big red couch just listening. The whistler has the same tune every night. It's cheerful. Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. Remember how I said there are 2 odd things about where I live? Well, besides our night whistler, everyone in my neighborhood is really lucky. It's hard to explain, and my dad doesn't like us talking about this part much either. But good things just seem to happen to people around here a lot. Usually it's small things, like winning a radio contest, getting an unexpected promotion at work, or finding some arrowheads buried in the yard. You know, the authentic kind. The weather is pretty good, and there's no crime, and everybody's gardens bloom extra bright in the fall. A million little blessings, I've heard my mom say about living here. But the main reason we stay here, why we moved here in the first place, is my sister Nola. She was born very sick, something with her lungs. We couldn't even bring her home when she was born, only visit her in the hospital. She was so small. I remember small even compared to the other babies. A machine had to breathe for her. We moved into our house here to be closer to the hospital. As soon as we moved here, Nola started getting better. The doctors couldn't figure it out. They chalked it up to whatever they were doing, but we all could tell they were confused. But my parents knew. Even I knew. Nola getting better was just another of the million little blessings we got for living in our neighborhood. So that's why we stayed, even after we found out that for every small miracle that happens here, every day, now and then some bad things happen. But they only happen if you look for the Whistler. See, our neighborhood has a welcoming committee. They show up with a macaroni casserole and a gift basket and a manila folder whenever someone new moves in. They're very friendly. 4 people showed up when we moved in 7 years ago. The committee made small talk, gave me a Snickers bar, and took turns holding Nola. It was her first week out of the hospital, so they were extra careful. Then the committee asked to speak to my parents in private, so I was sent to my room where I still managed to hear nearly every word. The welcoming committee told my parents about how nice the neighborhood was. Really exceptionally, hard to explain kind of nice. And then they told my parents about the even harder to explain whistling that happened every morning at 3:03 a.m. and ended at the tick of 3:05. The group, our new neighbors, warned my parents that the whistling was quiet, that would never harm or hurt us, as long as we didn't look for what was making the sound. This part they stressed, and I pushed my ear into the door, straining to hear them. People who went looking for the whistler had their luck change, sometimes tragically. A black cloud would hang over anyone that looked. Anything that could go wrong would. The manila envelope the committee brought over contained newspaper clippings, stories about car crashes and ruined lives, public deaths and freak accidents. Not everyone dies, I heard the head of the committee tell my dad, but the life goes out of them. Even if they live, there's no light in them ever again, no presence. My mom, I could tell she wasn't taking it seriously. She kept asking if this was some prank they play on new neighbors. At one point, my mom got angry, accused the committee of trying to scare us out of our new home, asked them if they were racist on account of my dad being from the islands. My dad calmed her down, told her he could tell our new neighbors were sincere and they were just trying to help us. He explained that he grew up hearing these kinds of stories from his mom and that he knew there were strange things that walked among us. Some of those strange things were good and some were bad, but most were just different. After the committee left, Dad went out to the hardware store, bought the canvas blinds, the latches, and the locks, and installed them on every window in the house after dinner. That first night in our new house, I crept out of my room at 3 a.m., only to find my dad awake, sitting on the living room couch, holding my baby sister. My dad held up his finger in a shh motion, but patted the couch next to him. I sat, and we waited. At exactly 3:03 a.m., we heard the whistling. Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. It came and it went just like our neighbors said. The whistling returns each night, and we never look, and we enjoy our million little blessings every day. Nola breathes on her own, and she's grown into a strong and clever girl. My dad even joined the welcoming committee. We don't get new neighbors often. Why would anyone want to leave? But when a new family moves in, my dad and the committee bring them macaroni casserole, a gift basket, and the manila folder. I can always tell by the look on my dad's face when he comes back if the family took the committee seriously or if we'd be getting new neighbors again very soon. Not long ago, a family moved in across the street from us. The previous owner, Miss Maddie, passed away at age 105. She lived a good, long life. Our new neighbors seemed like they'd fit in just fine. They believed the welcoming committee, took my dad's advice about the locking shutters since they had a young child of their own. Whatever newspaper clippings were in that manila envelope, whatever evidence, my dad never let us see. But I imagine it must have been awfully convincing since our neighbors got along with no issues for the first month. One night, when our new neighbors had to leave town, they sent their son Holden to stay with us. He was 12, a year under me in school. I didn't know him well before that night, but as soon as his parents dropped him off at dinner, I could tell it was going to be a bad time. "Do you know who's always out there whistling every night?" Holden asked the moment the adults left the room. The 3 of us were sitting in the den, some Disney movie playing idly on the television. My sister and I exchanged a glance. "We don't talk about that," I said. "I think it's that weirdo that lives in the big yellow house in the corner," Holden said. "Mr. Tolles?" my sister asked. "No way, he's really nice." Holden shrugged. "Must be a psycho killer then." Nola tensed. "We don't talk about it," I repeated. Let's go into my room and play Nintendo. We spent the next few hours playing games, eating popcorn, and then watching movies. A typical sleepover, but I could see Holden was getting antsy. After my parents had wished us a good night, locked the blinds, and gone to bed, Holden stood up from his beanbag and walked over to where Nola and I were sitting on my bed. "Have you ever even tried looking?" he asked. "It's nearly time." Like most sleepovers, we'd conveniently ignored any suggestion of a bedtime. I was shocked to see he was right. It was almost 3 a.m. I sighed. "We don't. See, I can't. I can't even try to look because my dad locks the blinds every night and hides the key," he continued, ignoring me. "So does our dad," said Nola. "No," replied Holden. "No, he doesn't." "You saw him do it," I said, a little sharper than I meant to. Holden grinned. "Your dad locks the blinds, yeah, but he doesn't hide the key. He keeps it right on his normal keychain." "So?" I asked, worried I already knew what he would say next, because I had noticed that my dad didn't bother hiding the key anymore after all of these years, because he knew we took it seriously. "So, after your dad locked up, but before your parents went to bed, I went to the bathroom, and on my way, I may have peeked into their room, and I may have seen your dad's keychain on his nightstand, and I may have gone and borrowed the key to the blinds." Nola and I stared, and his grin only grew wider. "You're lying," I said. Holden shrugged. "You can check if you want. Just open your parents' door and look. You'll see his keychain right there on the nightstand." "Stay here," I told both of them. "Don't move a muscle." I hurried over to my parents' room, but hesitated at the door. If Holden wasn't lying, my dad would be angry. Beyond angry. I was scared thinking about it, but more scared of an open window with the Whistler right outside. I opened the door, barely an inch, and looked in, but it was too dark to see. Taking a deep breath, I walked into the room. 2 steps into the dark, I froze. The whistling started, and I could hear it clearly, from my parents' room. I never realized, but they must have heard the sound every night since we moved into the house. They never told us. I don't think I could have slept through it. I stood there, listening to the whistling come closer, unsure whether I should turn on a light or call out for my dad. Soft sounds from the living room brought me back to reality. "Nola!" I yelled, running out of my parents' room. Holden and Nola were standing near the front door next to a window. Holden wasn't lying. I could see him fumbling with the lock on one of the blinds. I heard a click. He did have the key. Holden let out a quick laugh. Nola stood next to him, hunched up, afraid, but maybe curious. The whistling was right outside our house now. I think I made a sound, called out, I can't remember. Time felt frozen, clock hands nailed to the face. But I found myself moving. I'm not fast. I've never been athletic. Somehow, though, I covered the space between myself and Nola in a moment. My eyes were locked on her, but I heard Holden pull the blind all the way down so it could release. I heard the snap of it start to raise, and I heard the whistling just on the other side of the window. But I had my arms around Nola, and I turned us so she would be facing away from the window. At the same time, I jammed my eyes shut. The blinds whipped open. The whistling stopped. I felt Nola shaking in my arms. "Don't look, okay?" I told her. "Don't turn around." We were positioned so that she was facing back toward the hallway and I was facing the window. My eyes were still closed. I felt her nod into my shoulder. I reached out with my arm, not holding Nola, and tried to touch Holden. My hand brushed against his arm. He was shaking worse than Nola. "Holden?" I asked. Silence. I reached past him and gingerly felt for the windows, eyes still sealed shut. The glass was cold against my fingertips, colder than it should have been for the time of the year. I moved my hand up the window, searching for the string to the blind. The glass began to get warmer the further I reached, and there was a gentle hum feeding back to my fingertips. I tried not to think about what might be on the other side of the window. Finally, I touched the string and yanked the blind shut. I opened my eyes. In the dim light leaking out from the kitchen, I could make out Holden, pale and small, staring at the now closed window. "Holden?" I asked again. He turned towards me, and he screamed. Everything became a flurry of motion. Lights sparked to life in the hall, then the living room. My parents' footsteps thudded across the hardwood floor. I didn't turn to look back at them. My eyes were glued to Holden. He was pale, had bit his lip so hard there was a thin red line of blood running down his chin, and he'd wet himself. "What happened?" my dad asked from behind me. I managed to swivel away from Holden and look back. He looked. I'd never seen my dad scared before, but I saw it that night. In that moment, an old, ugly terror stitched on his face. A parent's face. "Just Holden?" he mouthed to me. I nodded, yes. My dad let out a breath. He looked so relieved I nearly expected him to cheer, but then he turned to Holden and my dad's face changed. I wonder if he felt bad for feeling good that Holden was the only one that looked. There was a knock at the door. We all froze. Holden whimpered. "Don't answer it," my mom said. She stood at the threshold of the hall. I'd always thought she was a skeptic and just humored my dad about the windows and the Whistler. But that night, we were all believers. I noticed that both my parents held baseball bats they must have taken from their bedroom. The knock came again, a little louder this time. "Please don't open the door," Holden whispered. My dad walked over to him, hugged him close. "We won't," my dad promised, still holding his bat. "Nothing is coming in here tonight." Thud, thud, thud. This time, the knocking was loud enough to rattle the door. Holden screamed again, and Nola clutched her arms around my neck. My mom came over and knelt down next to us, wrapping my sister and me close. Thud, thud, thud. "Call the police," my mom whispered to my dad. The knocking instantly stopped. My dad looked over his shoulder at us. "Do you think—" He was caught off by a frantic knocking that trailed off to a polite tap, tap, tap. "Police," something said from the other side of the door. The voice from outside sounded exactly like my mom, like a parrot repeating the words back to her. "Police. Call. The police. Tap, tap, tap. Police." My mom pulled us closer. "Police. Police. Police. Police." "Please stop," I heard her whisper. "I don't think calling them will help," my dad said. "How will we know when they're the ones at the door?" The knocking came back harder than before. The door shook. Then it stopped. After a long moment, I heard the knocking again, but it was coming from our back door. We all turned together towards the back door, but the knocking immediately returned to the front door. Front to back to front, loud then quiet and loud again. Suddenly, the sound was coming from both doors at once. Big, heavy blows like a sledgehammer. Then something started rapping against all of the windows in the house. Then the walls. It was like we were living inside a drum with a dozen people trying to play at once. Or we were a turtle and something was attempting to claw us out of our shell. "Stop!" Holden yelled. The knocking died. "I won't tell," Holden said, staring at the door. "I promise I won't tell anyone what I saw. Just please go away." We waited for nearly a minute. Then we heard it. A soft tap, 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 coming from the window Holden had looked through earlier. Holden started to cry, sobbing like a prisoner watching gallows being built outside their cell. My dad held him, brushed his hair but never lied to him, never told him things would be okay. The tapping at the window went on for the rest of the night. We huddled together in the living room for I don't know how long. Eventually, my mom tried to take us kids into my room while my dad stayed to watch the door. But the second we moved into my bedroom, the knocking came back. So loud, it was impossible to ignore. I was afraid the door couldn't take it. We went back to the living room and the knocking stopped. Only the tap, tap, tap on the window remained. None of us slept that night. The tapping stopped around 7 a.m. That's about the time the sun comes up here. We waited another 2 hours before my dad opened the blinds from one window. He made us all go back to my parents' bedroom first. I heard him open the door, then come back in. "Okay," he told us, "it's done." Holden's parents came back around lunchtime. My mom and dad walked Holden over to his house, and they all went inside for quite a while. Nola and I watched from the window. She stuck to me the whole day, right at my side, sometimes holding my hand. When my parents came back, they looked grim, but wouldn't tell us what they said to Holden's family. It was a Sunday, so we all spent the day together, ordered pizza, and watched movies. That night, everyone slept in my room. Nola and my mom in the bed with me, my dad in a chair he'd pulled over. There was no knocking that night, or any night since. We didn't see much of Holden or his parents for the rest of that week, but by Thursday, there was a moving truck in their driveway. Nola and I watched them packing up the whole afternoon after school. What sticks with me most is how tired Holden and his parents looked. All three had the same pallor, grim mouths and lightless eyes. Even from across the street, I could tell something was very wrong. Holden and his family were gone before sunset. I remember what the original welcoming committee said to my parents when we moved in. Not everyone who looks at the Whistler dies, but even those that live have the light go out of them, and the rest of their lives are full of misfortune. A million little tragedies. I think Holden's parents must have looked, either to comfort him if they didn't believe, or share the burden if they did. I watched Nola some days, happy and young and alive, and I wonder if I'd been slower. If she'd looked out the window that night, would I have looked too? To comfort her? To share that burden? I'm glad I don't have to find out. We still live in that house, in that neighborhood. We still hear our Whistler walking past every night. The blessings, the luck, the good things here are too good to leave. but we're careful. We don't have friends over to spend the night anymore, and my dad hides the key to the blinds very, very well. Not that I've gone looking. Some things you just don't need to look for. Alright, so that's the end of this scary no sleep story. Let me know if you enjoyed it, and make sure to like the video if you did. Also, make sure to comment if you want to hear more of these types of stories. Also, if you're liking what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. It really helps the channel a lot and helps you stay updated on the latest scary stories.